Hey everyone, and welcome back to another video. And in this video I'm going to talk about how you can improve when it comes to painting realistic animal portraits and any art for that matter. But before I get into that, I just thought I'd mention the painting that's going to be featuring in this video. And this is a commission that I completed in time for Christmas. It's a Schnauzer called Ted, and I was actually in the same school year as his owner, who's had a few other works done by me as well, mainly charcoal drawings, but they had this acrylic painting done of the current dog that they've got as a gift for his wife for Christmas. Obviously it's painted in my usual acrylics on Fabriano Artistico hot press. It's my A3 size, and I'll list all the supplies that I've used in the description, and you can go and have a look there if you want to know what it is that I'm using. So back to how you can improve as an artist, and first and foremost, as somebody who's been doing art since I could pick up a pencil or a brush or whatever it is I'm using, that would be to study the work of people that you admire, whose work you admire, and look at how they manage to get the effects that they get. Obviously you don't want to just copy other artists, you want to develop your own style. But by looking at different artists' work and trying to get a closer look at it and seeing how they actually achieve things, you can actually incorporate lots of different techniques from different people and make your own kind of combination, your unique combination of how you do things. But you always want to inject a little bit of yourself into it as well. I see some people getting intimidated and what have you by work that's a lot better than theirs, but it shouldn't be like that. You should be looking at work that's better than yours and being inspired by it, wanting to become as good at it. And that's what I've always done. I'm always looking for work that I think can inspire me, where the skills is really higher than mine maybe. You see it with beginners, and they think that more advanced people shouldn't post works in groups on Facebook because it's intimidating and puts them off, and it really shouldn't be like that at all. You shouldn't be put off by more advanced work than yours. You should be letting it inspire you and looking at it as a reason for you to push yourself to improve your own work. And just remember that the person that did that more advanced work, they started off in the same place as you. They weren't always like that. I weren't always like this, and I had to work at it for a long time to get where I am now. Number 2 is use decent materials and supplies. Quite often really cheap supplies can really hinder your progress because it's impossible to get the effects that you want using really cheap supplies that are not very good quality, and even an advanced artist might struggle with some of the supplies that are actually out there. So look for your good quality supplies because they will make your life a lot easier. You can look on YouTube for review videos, you can ask in Facebook groups for ideas on good supplies. You can look at artwork that's been posted and have a look at what supplies the person might have mentioned they've used in it, or you could ask them what supplies they used. So yeah, just do a little bit of research and also a little bit of experimentation, because you get some supplies that might work for one person, not so much for the next person as well. So you've just got to do a little bit of playing around and experimenting with different stuff, different surfaces, different mediums, different brands. And over time you will find the things that you find easiest to use, have the best effects for you, and make it easiest for you to get the effects that you want to get in your work. Number 3, and that is layering. Now, vast majority of mediums, it really pays to layer up to get your final effect, and I think that's one of the things that a lot of newbies do neglect a little bit. And it's also pays to learn that your earlier layers are just not going to look the best. They do go through ugly stages and what have you, so you've got to learn all this sort of process part of it as well, that even though it looks really ugly at the minute, it's not going to look ugly once you've layered up and added your final detailed layer or whatever style you're working in. It also means learning how to make all the underlayers work for you as well, not completely covering everything up but making it work for you, so that it adds the depth and what have you to your textures that you're painting and drawing. So yeah, instead of just looking at a reference photo, say of a dog, and just trying to start putting little tiny hairs and what have you in straight away, you need to be just trying to look at the general shades and tones and the graduations between them, the highlights and the shadows, and you just need to be mapping in the general impression of these things first before you start tidying things up and eventually get into your detailed layer. And this will result in much more realistic looking work that's got a lot more depth to it as well. So now on to number 4, and that would be not to be too much of a slave to your reference photos, and especially when you're doing textures like fur and grass and foliage, kinds of textures that are a little bit more random and not with a specific pattern. The idea is that you just learn to understand how the texture works, the way the fur lies and the way that it might not conform and you might get strands pointing in weird directions, and the way that light hits it and that kind of thing. And instead of trying to replicate every last little hair or blade of grass or leaf as it is in reference photo, you just you get the general impression of where things are, like the clumps of hair or clumps of grass or your boughs on a tree, and then you just use your knowledge of the general texture and apply that in order to get your texture in your artwork, rather than placing every last little blade of grass or hair strand or leaf or whatever in exactly the same place that it is in your reference photo. Because if you try doing that, not only is it like super laborious, but it would just end up looking stiff and lifeless, because you're not really flowing along with it, you're just agonising too much over making sure everything is in right place, all these tiny little details, and it just don't really work out. It's also worth bearing in mind that some reference photos can be quite flat, so you don't want to be doing exactly the same as a photo, otherwise it'll just not look very appealing as a painting either. Sometimes you've got to emphasise certain details, like say if you've got a shadowed area and it's a little bit too dark in your reference, you might just need to emphasise the detail that's in it a little bit more, so that it's not just like a flat black shadow, so to speak. If you can see some slight impressions of some detail going on in that shadowed area, for example, you just emphasise it a little bit more in your painting. That'd be just like one example of how you could enhance, compared to reference photo, to make your painting look more appealing. And then there's the obvious change in some things, like I've been asked to leave out grey hairs or little scars that pets have got. I've been asked to leave things like that out, or sometimes you have to remove collars and all that sort of stuff that you might need to do that's different to reference photo. And if you do things like pet portraits, it's always worth learning how to do backgrounds as well, because sometimes clients do want a complex background, like a story going on, the dog like in a scene or something like that. So don't neglect learning how to paint things other than just pets and fur and that sort of thing. I mean, a lot do say that it's also worth drawing and painting from life, and it's alright if you're doing like sceneries or human models, but it's not so easy when you're doing animals, because they don't like to sit still for very long. So you do end up having to be a lot more reliant on reference photos when you're doing animals, for example, because they're not going to sit and pose for you for hours on end like a person can. And lastly, for now, because we're running out of video, and that is to basically just enjoy the process and don't be too hung up on the final result. I think the more you just enjoy the process, naturally the better the end result will be. But yeah, that's basically all I can fit in this video for now. There's plenty more, but them's just some tips for you for now anyway. So I think that's going to have to do it for now, and then I'll see you in my next video. Bye!